Welcome to G-Man Gaming and Reviews. So today's video is going to be essential Fallout 4 settlement tips for maximizing resources, farming, happiness, and automation. So what we're going to talk is in this video, we're going to cover essential tips for optimizing your Fallout settlements, focusing on resource management, efficient farming, settlement happiness, fertilizer production, automated resource gathering, and scavenging and recycling. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is talk about maximizing resource production. So, when you first start out in a settlement, like Sanctuary for instance, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to walk around looking for a whole bunch of scrap on the ground. So if I go into, say, this house in particular, and I go into... I've already done it here. But if I was to say go into this house in particular, I could scrap all the stuff that was here. Like the TV, for instance, right? I could scrap it. Now, the reason that you want to do that is because if you go around your settlement, particularly Sanctuary, you're going to find a whole bunch of things you can scrap, including houses, cars, concrete blocks, tires for rubber, right? So this is going to net you a very large amount of resources early on, especially in Sanctuary, right? So after you do that, so there's a couple of things in order to get more scavenging happening. The first thing is that if you actually go into your resources and you go to miscellaneous, you've got these scavenging stations here, right? Now, the advantage of placing these scavenger stations is that normally settlers will actually scavenge, but if you have a settler assigned to a scavenging station, they will scavenge for you extra resources. So this is really good for if you have absolutely settlers with nothing to do. You might as well have them do something. If you can't afford to have them do stores, then you might as well have them doing scavenging production if they're not doing anything else, right? So the other thing that we're going to talk about is obviously you will need to set up farms and water. Now, when you first start, right, you're only going to have access to water pumps. But later on, if you have access to like fresh water, you can build these sorts of... if you got like water areas, you can build these sorts of purifiers here, right? And obviously you've got farming. So now we're going to move on to effective farming practices. So what you want to do is you generally want to have a farm of mut fruit, corn, and tato. And I like to add a little razor grain later. The reason being is that corn, mut fruit, and tato are used to make adhesive. You also want to group your crops into, like, together, like the same type of crop together so that it's easy to harvest from them, right? So that's very important. Obviously, you need to maintain enough food to keep your settlement happy. Also, the advantage of having high food at a particular location, like Sanctuary, which has got a lot of room for farmland, is that if you have settlement lines set up, any excess food that isn't used by your settlement can be used by other settlements, right? So it's a very handy thing to keep in mind. So, like I said, I like to lay out my crops in a straight line, especially here. Put fences around them, but you don't really need to do that. But I just like to lay them out in a straight line, so it makes it very, very easy to get the crops. The other thing is, now the reason I've got razor grain is because razor grain is used for these cages here, for Brahmin cages, so they're very useful for that. The other advantage of having crops is you can sell them, but I normally don't do that. But early on, if you need extra cash, you might as well. Now, we're going to move on to settlement happiness. Now, I'm just going to share that there was a commenter by the name of Mr. Anderson who gave me some tips in one of the comments for increasing settlement happiness. So thank you for that, Mr. Anderson. So let's move on. All right. So okay. So keeping your settlers happy is very important. If you don't keep your settlers happy, they will start leaving, which is kind of annoying if it happens. So there's numerous ways to keep your settlements happy. I'll cover the first tips. So obviously to make sure you have enough food and beds and water for the settlement. The other thing is that there are certain things that you can add for settlement happiness. Now, the ones that I got from Mr. Anderson that I'm going to be covering here today are... So this is in the furniture miscellaneous section. Is pommel horses and weight benches. These things actually will increase settlement happiness, right, when you place them, which is very, very handy to have. The other one that Mr. Anderson talked about, hang on, can't remember, where was it? No, it was decorations. So if you go to decorations, you go to Nuka World. If you go to decorations, you go... I think it's here. Yeah, jukeboxes, right? These jukeboxes require power, but when you place them, they actually do generate settlement happiness. So something useful to keep in mind. Now, these do require power, but they're automated, so you don't have to do anything with them. So other ways of increasing settlement happiness that I've already covered is cats and dogs. So you can come down here, and I've got a dog cage here and a cat cage here. So to get your cages, you go into cages here. Small cages for a cat cage and a dog cage. A cat cage, sorry, and hang on. And a dog cage. A dog cage requires canned food, canned dog food, and a cat cage requires... Now, the way that you do it is you place it, you connect it to power, and you just leave it. And when you come back later on, the door will be closed. Then you just turn the generator off, and the cat will be released. The same thing with the dog. Just be aware that with a dog cage, sometimes it will actually give you hostile dogs. And you can tell because they don't look like regular dogs. They look like ghoul dogs. So those are some tips for increasing settlement happiness. The other thing, obviously, is to couches and stuff like that, furniture, to have like furnished places where they can congregate. These extra houses actually make good spaces for this, because they're basically not doing anything, especially in my case. I'm just going to scrap this and scrap the radio. Because what I've done is I've created here where I keep my beds. So that's all in the one place. So now we're going to focus on automated resource gathering. Sorry. Using Brahmin for fertilizer production. Okay, so there's a couple of ways to get Brahmin. The first is with this feeding trowel, right? Which you will find in the... I think it's in the resources miscellaneous section. Yeah. So if you keep... this will actually, based on the information that I found, will actually also gives you a chance to have Brahmin come to your settlement. The other one is you can catch them with these cages here, right? So they're similar to the other cages. You'll find them in the cages section under medium cages. There's even a gunner cage. That's really funny. It's in large cages. Yeah, Brahmin cage in large cages, right? So you'll find them there, which is very useful for... Brahmin are very useful for... Now, the reason Brahmin are very useful is they produce fertilizer, which means that they will actually create... If you have a rank in... Oh, hang on, not this one. If you have a rank in chemistry Or sorry, actually you don't need a rank. If you have fertilizer and plastic, you can create jet, and jet sells for a lot, and it's very low value. So another handy tip. So now we're going to talk about automated resource gathering, which we all sort of already covered before. You want to have scavenging stations early on, especially if you've got settlers that aren't doing anything. Right? So, like I said, scavenging stations are very useful for generating... one thing that I didn't cover as well that I covered in a previous video is the barber here will actually produce happiness as well. And you can find the barber from resources, miscellaneous, and barber there. Also, stores increase happiness, just in case I didn't cover that before. The general, the trader... and the food and drink and the clothing stores and the clinics also produce happiness. So what later on, you're not going to really want to have scavenging stations. You're probably going to want to have clinics for money. So yes, now we're going to cover scavenging and recycling. So in this game, you're going to encounter a lot of junk. Now, you want to early on. It's going to be pretty hard to hold on to a lot of junk. Because you're not gonna until you get sanctuary, you're not gonna have a place where you can keep things. But junk, when I say scavenging, I mean when you go out to various places, you'll find a lot of junk. One thing that you can do is if you go into transfer, hang on. Where is it? Okay, I don't have any junk. Let's have a look. Let's take the 5-pound weight. If you go into component view, right, by clicking on junk and clicking on C, you can actually, if you hit Q, it'll actually tag this for search. So whenever you're scavenging in an area, it'll let you know if a particular component that you're after is there. That's very, very handy to know. So that's another way to make sure that if you're looking for like a particular type of junk, like maybe you're after electronics or whatever, it's a handy way of making sure that you don't miss out on them. So scavenging areas is going to be a big way of getting junk. So that's the reason why you're going to want to have a companion with you. Early on, it might not be as difficult because your weapons are really light, because you're only going to be using pipe weapons if you're using guns. But later on, like if you have a look at my inventory here, you'll actually see that I've got 166 of 230 already used up on inventory. I could probably get rid of a lot of stuff. But what I generally do is I tend to wear power armor so that I've got like massive amounts of extra space. And my power armor, if you have a look at the legs, they've got calibrated shocks, to increase carry weight. And obviously this power armor increases your strength by a massive margin, which makes it a lot easier to carry lots of things. So when I tend to go out, I tend to go with a companion so that they have extra storage. One advantage to know is if you don't want to take companions, you can take this perk called, where is it? The Lone Wanderer, which only requires a charisma of 3. Now, it increases your carry weight by 50. Now when it says when adventuring without a companion, so if you get this rank up, you'll actually see that it increases your carry weight by 100 at level 2. Now, the advantage of this perk is that you can actually take it with the dog, with dog meat, I think it is. So if you're either going without a companion or you're going with dog meat, you should definitely take that perk. which only requires a charisma of 3 for the extra carry weight. But I don't normally do that, but it's something handy to know, right? So another thing about recycling is when you've got traders, you definitely want to go. You're definitely going to want to talk to traders because they always carry junk. What I normally do is I tend to sort junk by value, and then I tend to go down to the cheapest and have a look to see if there's anything that's worth buying. So this could be worth buying for asbestos. These could be worth buying for plastic. That could be worth buying for lead. So the point is that like you definitely want to check your traders because like this one is very valuable for gears. Gears are very valuable. So you definitely want to check your traders for components that you're going to need. Like for instance, copper and glass. Copper is very valuable. Cloth could be very valuable. Asbestos, plastic. Plastic is pretty valuable actually later on if you're using Exo armor, or because I think it uses plastic. Exo 6 armor, I think it is. Oil, gears, these are very, very valuable. Gears and screws. Screws are used when you're doing upgrades to your weapons, so very valuable. So something to keep in mind. Always, these are very cheap. Like this one, circuitry for hot plates, very, very useful. So something to keep in mind. Like this one especially, the aluminium, because nuclear material and aluminium is used in things like, I think it's used in things like generators, and I think it's also used, so yeah, these things in particular, very valuable. I think this is actually used in a quest as well, but yeah, biometric scanner, very valuable. So these things are very valuable, just because of the components, right? All right, this was G-Man Gaming and Reviews. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Feel free to leave more comments. I love comments. So top video things that I missed, things that you think that would benefit other players, ways you'd like to do things, all that good stuff. I always love to hear it. Yep, as this was G-Man Gaming and Reviews signing off. Thank you for watching. All right, bye.